Good evening, good morning, YouTube, wherever you're at. Salutations. So I got a book haul here. I recently had a doctor's appointment, and I actually found a used bookstore I had never been to, so I went ahead and stopped in there. They had a pretty good selection of stuff, so I'll probably go in there again sometime. I don't know how often they turn over books there and get new inventory, but it is a used bookstore. I got a couple near me. They're all about 20 minutes away from me, so it's just a matter of, what's convenient at the time. So I stopped at two used bookstores just within the last 48 hours. So I'll go ahead and show some of these. In the used bookstore, the one I had never been in before, I actually kind of broke my own rule, which is I bought books I hadn't read before. So typically the way I do it is I only buy hard copy physical books of books that I have read before, besides like extenuating circumstances. So and most of these are that. So it's either I haven't read it in a really long time, or it's an author I'm interested in. But typically that's the way I do it. So because generally speaking, I read all my books digitally. So and that entails reading on my phone a lot, but I read on my Kindle a lot. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and show these books. A couple of these are for research for a project I'm doing. So this is a narrative of a revolutionary soldier. This is by Joseph Plum Martin. So this is actually written by a soldier who was in the American Revolution. It's not very long. It's only about 170 pages, so I can read this pretty quick. This is part of my research project. I'm trying to write a book, two of them actually, but one of them is a historical fiction set during the American Revolution. So I'm going to read this as part of that research. Of course, it's not that hard to find details about what it was like for a revolutionary soldier, but of course this is, first-hand information, so it doesn't get much better than that. And then this is a pretty well-known book, too, if you've never read it. So I want to say there's a Penguin Classic Edition, but this is the version I found, so I'm just going to go with that. So this is a book I've read before. There's a couple in here I have. So this is Cold Mountain by Charles Fraser. This is a really well-known historical fiction novel. And I think it even says it on here. I think this won the Pulitzer Prize. I might be wrong about that. Maybe it's the Man Booker Prize, but it won an award. This is a very good book. If you've never read Cold Mountain, now there's a Civil War book I have in here that's better than this, but this is a very, very good book. If you've never read Cold Mountain, you should check this out. And it's also one of those if you're into historical fiction, this is like on what you may consider like a must-read list, or even like a canon of historical fiction. This is like almost mandatory reading for a historical fiction fan. It's that well-known of a book. So anyway, check this out. I don't think the movie's very good, but I think Cold Mountain's, I think the book's a little overrated too, but it is very good. I like it a lot. So definitely check it out. So this is one I did break my rule on. This is Ruska by Edward Rutherford. I've read Earl Rutherford before. They actually had his London book there, and I kind of wish I would have picked it up because I have read that. That's an excellent book. London's very good. So Edward Rutherford's a lot like James Michener. If you're familiar with James Michener, he sort of picks like an area or a location and writes like a multi-generational story about that area, which can make for some very enthralling reading if you've never read a book like that before. Another good one is I don't have it here, but Bark Skins by Annie Proulx. That takes place in Quebec, Canada, and in the Hudson Bay, and I think some of it's in New Brunswick and maybe even Nova Scotia. So sorry if you don't know Canadian geography, but anyway, that Bark Skins, that is an excellent book. Check that out if you've never read that before. But they start off as like fur trappers, and then they move into like the lumber market and lumber trade, and it's a fantastic book. But anyway, so this is, as you can see, it's called Ruska. It's that style of story. It's a multi-generational story set in Russia. And so I'm really looking forward to reading this. I got this on my to-be-read list. I'm sure it's going to be pretty good, so I don't mind owning it. And if not, I can always, trade it back in. So I got this at Half Price Books. I stopped there, too. So this is Bunker Hill by Nathaniel Philbrick. This is a nonfiction book, and this is kind of part of my research project. Nathaniel Philbrick's a pretty well-known nonfiction author. He's got some other, I want to say he has another American Revolution book that I'll probably check out sometime. James L. Nelson has a nonfiction book about Bunker Hill too, so I probably will read that too because I'm interested in James. I want to read more James L. Nelson stuff, but this was there, so I went ahead and picked it up, and so I'm looking forward to reading this. I don't know how soon I'll get to it because I'm already reading The British Are Coming by Rick Atkinson, and I want to read that A Diary of a Revolutionary Soldier. So I don't know how soon I'll get to this, but I'm gonna get to it soon. So. Oh, this is a really good book right here. I found this at the new to me used bookstore. This is The Killer Angels. This is a fantastic book. This is probably the best Civil War book I've ever read. I think this won an award too, but I might be wrong about that. Does it say it on here? I don't see it on here, but yeah, it does. This the Pulitzer Prize winning Civil War novel. So maybe Cold Mountain didn't win it. Maybe it's this book that did, and I'm thinking of. But this is a phenomenal book. It's about the Battle of Gettysburg. The commanding officer in it is like a teacher, if I remember right, and they're from Maine. It's been a while since I've read this, but I'm due for a reread of this. The Killer Angels, I would qualify as another one of those historical fiction books that if you like the genre of historical fiction, you really should read this book. This is a fantastic book. This is probably in my top 15 books ever. This is just a great book. So if you've never read The Killer Angels, definitely check it out. And you know, I kind of wish I would have. I need to read some more stuff by this author, Michael Shara. I haven't heard the best stuff about his other books, and that happens with authors sometimes. But I still think it'd be worth checking out. And the Civil War is always interesting. They had this really great nonfiction Civil War book that was almost like a textbook, but it had. I wish I would have picked it up now. It wasn't even that much. It was like $10. But it had a bunch of good maps in it, and I love maps. I just love maps. So, for whatever reason, I like owning maps. I like looking at maps. I just love maps. I like historical maps usually. But even modern maps. I love maps. So, anyway, definitely read The Killer Angels if you've never read that. That's just a fantastic book. So this. I think this would be. So this one's kind of against my rule. I've never read this. This is Tides of War by Stephen Pressfield. But, you know, I like these. You know, I like these kind of trade paperback editions of books. But Stephen Pressfield wrote Gates of Fire. Gates of Fire is another, like, must-read historical fiction novel. Gates of Fire is about the Spartan 300 and the stand at Thermopylae. But Tides of War is about the Peloponnesian War, which is between Sparta and Athens, which you might think is like a one-sided, Sparta, well, you know, they can't win. You know, Sparta is known for, you know, the great Spartan warriors. They can't lose that. But they, in the long run, end up losing. Historically, they win like the first round, and basically there's a second round of fighting, and then Athens wins. Athens is just too powerful. It just has too powerful of a navy, really. But anyway, this is between Sparta and Athens, and I think this would be pretty good. I really want to read Stephen Pressfield's Alexander book, but since I own this, maybe I'll just read this first, because that was what I was going to read next, was his Alexander book, but maybe I'll just do this one next. This is a book I have read before, and I actually just recommended it recently on the channel. This is Agincourt by Bernard Cornwell. If you've watched any of my videos, you'll know that Bernard Cornwell is my favorite author, and is always going to be my favorite author, so that's never going to change. But this is a really good book. It's a one-off. So Bernard Cornwell is mostly well known for the Sharpe series, which is based on the character Richard Sharpe, and it takes place during the Napoleonic Wars, specifically during the Peninsular Wars. Although he did write a 3-book prequel that takes place in India, and I kind of wish he would do one about the War of the First Coalition, which is in Flanders, but because Richard Sharpe in his backstory fought in Flanders too, and there's no book set in that time period, so I think that'd be interesting if Bernard Cornwell did that. But anyway, I love those books in India and the Sharpe series. But this is a really good book. Definitely check this out if you've never read. It's about the Battle of Agincourt, a pretty well-known and famous battle. I talked about this a little bit recently because I just read Henry V by Dan Jones. I need to do a review of that book because that was really good. I really like that. Dan Jones did a Henry V biography. Henry V is who was king of England at the time when this battle took place. And the English won a great battle that was pretty insurmountable odds, largely due to the use of the longbow and the really great archers on the English side. So a pretty well-known battle and a pretty outstanding victory. Henry V, he goes to Normandy and marches through France, almost the exact same path, not the exact same, but pretty close to Edward III and the Black Prince when they had their Cressy campaign. So this is a pretty well known battle, and this is a really good book. So definitely check this out if you've never read it. I was going to see, I don't think it has the George R. R. Martin blurb on it. They put that on a lot of Bernard Cornwell books. Oh, so it's got a map right here in the back. I'll go and show this. And I love maps, so. And that kind of shows where his campaign took place. Right there, mostly in Normandy. Harfleur is the first city they siege and take, which ends up becoming a stronghold for England for a little while after that. Oh, this is a good one right here too. I haven't read this in many years. This is The Covenant by James Michener. I don't know why he called this The Covenant, but it's why he's called it that instead of maybe like South Africa, because this mostly takes place. It's a multi-generational story. So I was just talking, about Rutherford. This is just like that. This is James Michener kind of popularized this style of making these multi-generational stories kind of based on a geographical location. And this one takes place in South Africa. I read this a really long time ago. I want to say it's been at least 15 years since I read this, probably longer. Yeah, probably about 15 years since I read this. Because this is probably like the third James Michener book I've read. The first one was Alaska, and the second one was Texas. And then I read, I think, this, and I read Poland. I've read like 5 or 6 James Michener books. There's another one he has set in Colorado that I don't remember the title of. It's not called Colorado. I know that for sure. But that's where it mostly takes place. That's a really good one too. It's this one, Alaska, and the one in Colorado are probably my 3 favorites by James Michener. And I want to read this. I've mentioned this in other videos too. I love the history of Africa and sub-Saharan Africa, but even the Maghreb. Africa just has a fascinating history that living in the Western world we just don't learn that much about. Obviously, this has a lot of the British and Zulu War in it, which is infinitely interesting. So just, if you've never read any James Michener, this would be a pretty good place to start. And this is one of the books that really instilled in me an interest in Africa. Tarzan is what really started that, but it was like this, reading this, and then like the movie District 9, which is a fantastic movie. If you've never seen District 9, it's one of the best science fiction movies ever. But that takes place in Johannesburg, which is a mega city with 15 million people in it. I think a lot of this is near Cape Town, but this is still a really great book. So if you've never read this, definitely check it out. It's really interesting stuff. So if you don't know that much about South Africa or African history, I got a couple more here. I actually ordered one of these on the internet. This is Musashi. I've been reading this recently. I stopped. I'm about halfway through it because I was so eager to start my Sharp series reread. But I'm gonna come back and finish it probably this week. This has been a really good, excellent book. Even despite me saying that I stopped it, I was actually really enjoying it. It's just a pretty large book. It's close to 1,000 pages. I'm about halfway through it, and I liked it so much I went ahead and picked this up, and I'll probably pick up Tycho too, because I feel confident I'm going to like Tycho. But this is a really great book. If you've never read Musashi, definitely check it out. Eiji Yoshikawa is the name of the author. So Musashi is a really well-known swordsman and samurai during the feudal era of Japan. This takes place in about the 1600s. It's during the Taiko era. So if you've ever read Shogun or seen the show, it's that same time frame. Although Shogun uses fictional names for the characters, it's based on sort of true events, right? So Musashi was a very well-known swordsman and samurai, and also wrote some important works of Japanese literature. So if you've never read this is really great. There's a lot of stuff about they talk about the art of war, a lot of this, by Sun Tzu. And if you've never read The Art of War by Sun Tzu, you ought to read that too. But just, it's interesting to me that in Japanese culture, how much they kind of like respect and, revere Chinese culture, despite the things that happened in World War II, if you don't know much about that subject. So, it's so surprising. It's just surprising to me how much they seem to respect the Chinese culture, and yet some of the things that took place during that time. If you don't know about that, go and look it up. So it's very graphic. So be careful. Oh, this is a good one here. This is the original Duke, right? This is a biography written by Winston Churchill about John Marlborough, the Duke of Marlborough, the first Duke of Marlborough. If you don't know who the Duke of Marlborough is. He's kind of like the Duke of Wellington before the Duke of Wellington. So the Duke of Wellington is the main general during the Napoleonic era in the Peninsular Campaign that defeated Napoleon at Waterloo. So, but anyway, so the Duke of Marlborough he was also an incredibly successful general and battlefield commander, mostly during the War of the Spanish Succession. And despite it being called the Spanish Succession, it was largely against the French. But he never lost a battle there. But he was also involved in the Williamite Jacobite rebellion. So which was in Ireland. So in Scotland too, I believe. So he was also involved in that, and then the 9 Years' War, and all different. Is Monmouth the other one? The Rebellion of Monmouth, which is an English rebellion. Anyway, never lost a battle. So this is an incredibly fascinating historical figure. And when I was thinking about writing a historical fiction book, this was the other route I was thinking about going. So my idea is that I create a character similar to Richard Sharp, and we follow that character through, one of these kind of musket era wars. I kind of like that. So I decided to go with the American Revolution just because I know it so much better already, and I would just need to do a massive amount of research on the War of Spanish Succession and all those other events I mentioned that are a little bit harder to find materials on. And I already have a good base for the American Revolution, and it's an era I already really like. So I kind of decided to go with that for now. I may still revisit this, though, and do this at some point in time, because this is so interesting to me. This is so fascinating. And not many people know who this is, especially in the United States. I'm sure he's more well known in England. I would guarantee it almost, and in the UK in general, and Ireland, maybe just the rest of the English-speaking world. And of course, this is written by Winston Churchill, and just about everybody knows who that is. So, but Winston Churchill has a direct relation to this person, and I just think this would be a really fascinating read. I think this is only the first volume. I want to say there's 4 volumes, and I don't know if I hope they're not all as big as this one, because this will take a while to get through. Yeah, it's like 1,000 pages. Anyway, but I think this will still be a really good read. I don't know how soon I'll get to it now, because it's kind of low on the priority list, but I am going to read this sometime. So anyway, like I said, I broke some of my own rules here. There's a handful of books I haven't actually read before. This is one of them. There was a couple others in there that I hadn't read that I went ahead and picked up. But I wanted to support that used bookstore that I had never been to, and spend a little bit of money there. I don't mind spending money on a cause and a person or whatever that I want to support. So I don't mind doing that, and I get some books out of it. So that's no problem. And I'll probably go there again sometime. I was thinking about getting the camera rolling in there, but like I said, I didn't know the people, and I don't know. That might have been weird. So there's another bookstore, though, that I go to. The next time I go there, I'll maybe get the camera rolling in there, because I know them. I've been there a bunch of times. So anyway, so just a little bit of a book haul. That's all for today, YouTube. Good night or good evening, wherever you're at.